All right, welcome to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest with AJ Brooks, the certified dog, and Baylin Trujillo, the quarterback whisperer, has his mic on mute again. I tell you what, guys, week 2 was exciting. We got a lot of games to go over. We got our special guest tonight. John Garcia Jr. for Rivals is going to join us here in about 15, 20 minutes, and he's going to go through the top 10 with us. We're going to talk about our dudes of the week, and we're going to look at week 3. We got a lot of action this week, so let's get right to it. And, guys, let's start off with South Lake taking out Tavares 17-12. Both of you guys took Tavares in this game.
Yeah, I took Tavares. I thought they had a couple more household names. Isaiah Williams is a terrific player. He had a great game. But at the end of the day, you've been high on Coach Lord all season, all preseason. So, yeah, they won that game. Isaiah Henderson also had a great game for South Lake, 3 catches for 76 yards. And Tyson Williams, also had 16 tackles. So it was a great team effort by them.
And Baylin, Trey Kelly for South Lake had 135 yards passed, and he also had 50 yards on the ground as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great performance for South Lake. I did not see this coming. I mean, we talked about Tavares averaging almost 50 points a game. I mean, I was excited about that. And, wow, boy, were we all wrong in this situation. And I know you went out to go see Isaiah Williams play. I know you've been contacted with him and his family of recent. And, I know he put up a big show. But, I mean, it's a one-man show. You stop him, Tavares is in trouble. So, South Lake, we talked about it. Coach Lord has that team rolling. And, man, I'm just shocked. But great job to South Lake. That might be a team we look out for. And Tavares, unfortunately, they got a lot of ground to work towards.
Yeah, and let me tell you, Isaiah Williams, the 4-star linebacker, also played offense, played a lot of the game at offense, had a receiving touchdown that was insane, and also played a little bit of running back, got a rushing touchdown for Tavares. They had to come from behind, but just short, 17-12. All right. Our old friend Coach Lodge comes to town with the Berkeley Stags, but they fall to Winter Park 19-14, AJ.
Yeah, I like Winter Park in this matchup. They were able to come away with a victory. Henry Rivers, the quarterback for Berkeley, he had a monster game, though. He did have 150 yards passing and 180 yards rushing. But Winter Park was able to hold on at home, 19-14. So Gabriel Davis had a pick, an interception. He's a terrific athlete for them. So, yeah, Winter Park, it's a good win for him, real good win.
Baylin?
Yeah, I was definitely wrong in this prediction only because I don't have a good record against Coach Lodge. And fortunately, Winter Park got away with the W for your boy AJ Brooks in this week. So, Winter Park with he's at Florida. Grant Connor, I mean, he had a great ball game, threw to a former quarterback. He scored 2 touchdowns in the game, too. I know he was probably one of the players of the weeks for a couple social media platforms, Gabriel Diaz. But, man, what a great performance for Winter Park. It's a pretty good win. I know Coach Lodge has a really good, fundamentally sound football team in Berkeley, and I know they came down here to make a statement and unfortunately did not go back with a W. So great job to Winter Park. This was one of the wins that they needed on their schedule to get a little bit more respect in this area as far as, playing good competition. And they did that. So hopefully it builds into momentum. They have a bye week this week, and they've got a pretty good stretch coming up here in the near couple weeks. But great job to Winter Park Wildcats, and what a good statement win that was.
No, absolutely. Congratulations to the coaches and players of Winter Park to start the season 1-0. All right, big game. Lyman at Toho. Toho takes care of business. They edge this thing out 24-23, AJ.
Yeah, this was a terrific game. I thought that Lyman would have enough, but obviously Toho was at home. Sabby had 321 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But Trey Punter had a big game, 9 catches, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tony Brown, we call him Duke, he had 6 catches and 78 yards and a touchdown, and he's a freshman. So we're going to see him for a long time. He's going to be making a lot of plays around here. But defensively, Andrew Hines had 14 tackles, 3.5 sacks. Isaiah Brutus had 14 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and Chris Carity had 16 tackles. So it was a good team effort, and they came away with the victory at the end.
Baylin, Lawson Rawls had a big game for Lyman, 7 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah, Braylon Sanchez in the first half and even midway through the third quarter actually was playing really well. Threw a couple touchdowns, I believe either 2 or 3 touchdowns on the night. And Sev Crooms had a really good first half, and then he went out with issues. They had about 3 or 4 starters at receiver out the entire fourth quarter with cramping issues, and that obviously played a big part in why Lyman couldn't get things rolling in the fourth quarter. They were up the entire game until the last 2 seconds when they kicked the field goal to win the game for Toho. So when you have 3 or 4 JV receivers out there and your best players are cramping up, it's hard, And talking to Jamel Jones actually this morning, he kind of had a venting episode with me, and he said there was 20 penalties compared to 3. So Lyman had 20 penalties the entire game. So it was definitely lopsided, and I think that's really the only way Toho was going to come away with the victory if they had other things working in their favor. Obviously, Sabi had a pretty good game, but he also did throw 2 interceptions. But they did come with the 1-point win. I had to find out the story because I was kind of confused on this, but Toho did win this game, and Lyman, that's to regroup. But again, not injuries, but cramping. Drink water, guys. Drink water.
Hey, real quick, Dan. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Coach Anthony Paradiso. He picked up his 100th victory. That's
big time. Absolutely, Coach Diso, man, we're proud of you, brother. Hanging in there for 100 wins. Very few coaches do that in Central Florida anymore, and that's a big milestone. Absolutely. The Tigers move on to 2-0. All right, O'Galley, 40-0 over Rockledge. Joseph Allen, Baylin, 7 of 11 for 160 in a score.
Yeah, well, actually, he threw 3 touchdowns in this football game, and he actually just picked up an offer from the University of Kentucky today. They called me and told me they're offering him. So great job to Joseph Allen. Again, 3 touchdowns against Rockledge in a rivalry we talked about last week. And this, when's the last time Rockledge, actually lost to Ugali? It was actually last year. So now 2 years in a row, Rockledge has dropped to Ugali before winning, I believe, 5 or 6 straight. Rockledge has some things to figure out. I mean, they're obviously, I believe they're 1-1 right now, not 0-2. I think they won their first game, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, man, I just, with Coach T. Roan out there, he's trying to figure out things with some, new players and transfers and stuff like that. And Jordan had an up and down game. I know he'll get it together, but yeah, let's just focus on Joseph Allen, what he did, and that's not an easy task to do that against a good Rockledge sound defense, throwing 3 touchdowns and a mollywop shutout win for Ugali.
AJ, we've talked about O'Galley and Coach Sands and his squad here over the last couple of weeks. This is no surprise that they're off to a 2-0 start.
No, sir. No, sir. This is a very, very talented ball club, well coached. You talk about Brandon Brown. He's committed to LSU. You got Xavier Laresi, 4-star All-American DB, Emmanuel Small, Tay Lent, Tay Welch. They have a plethora of athletes. And I think in Brevard County, I think this is the second best team in Brevard County behind Cocoa. And I'm not sure do they play Cocoa, but if they do, I think they would give Cocoa a game, honestly. But yeah, I love this team. EG's a very good ball club. All
right, the Commodores off to 2-0. This was a big one. Tigers going to Mainland. 2 defending state champions here, guys. Cocoa takes that away 51-0, Baylin.
Yeah, this is why we don't go into the past. Mainland is a defending state champion. Obviously, Cocoa is. Mainland's a completely different football team. This same team is not losing 51-0 from the team they had last year. They're still trying to figure out their identity at the quarterback position. Their defense isn't the same without LJ McCray, who's out in Florida. There's a lot of missing pieces on this team that they're still trying to figure it out. And, 51-0. We always, with teams, you play with your homecoming games or whatnot. We talk about 50 burgers and all that. This is Mainland, and they got thrashed by the Tigers. And, of course, Javon Boggs, I believe, had 4 first-half touchdowns. Brady Hart had 5 passing touchdowns in the game. Honestly, AJ and Dan, I don't even remember the last time, other than Lake Mary beating them 33-0, where Mainland has completely been dominated like this on a big stage. It's this is not good.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Mainland lost a lot of talent. Xavier Mincy, he's at Alabama. You talk about
LJ McCray.
LJ McCray's at Florida. Isaiah Shine, he's
DJ
at
Murray, Georgia State.
Yeah, you just keep going on. Rodney Hill. But anyway, like you said, it's not the same team. They still do have talent, but Coco's just a different level. I think Cocoa is they're just different. And with the mindset of Coach Snyder and the group, their offensive mindset. They're always attacking. Like you said, they put up 50. So, yeah, Coco, they different.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what I know is Coach Bell and his coaching staff are going to coach these guys up. Mainland still has a chance to have a great season, and we're going to see that develop here over the next few weeks. All right, Evans drops a tough one at Apopka, 6-0. AJ, Tyson Davison had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. That was the Apopka offense.
Yeah, Tyson, he proved to be the difference maker. He scored the game's only touchdown, only points. Donovan Mudrow, he did have 25 carries and over 102 yards. So, I mean, Apopka, respect to them. They find a way to win. It was a 6-0 ball game. I still stand on what I believe, 6 points. I mean, within 2 games, I think they got 16 points in 2 games, and they're 2-0. So if you told me that my ball club would score 16 points in 2 games, I would not think that I'll be 2-0. But shout out to Apopka. Great defense, but they definitely got to figure it out on offensive end for sure.
You know, Baylin, this has been a traditional rival. You know, we had the Orlando Touchdown Club meeting last night. We inducted 2 of the most amazing coaches. We inducted all 3. Larry Gergley from Winter Park. But then we also inducted, by the way, Coach Gergley, the all-time winningest coach. 26 years he was coaching at Winter Park. We also inducted Chip Gerke and Bill Gerke. And back when I played for Apopka, it was the Gerke Bowl. Apopka and Evans, it was always lights out. It's always been that way. The Apopka-Evans game is always going to be a big game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But you know what? Apopka's come through for me 2 weeks in a row against AJ's pick. And like I said, AJ said, how do you win 2 games when you only score 16 points? Well, you've given up no points in 2 games. So the only way to do that is a complete shutout. So you win 10-0 and 6-0. So no one has yet to score on this Apopka offense. It might change this week. I think actually it will change this week, but that's for later on in the show. But yeah, this is one of those games where, you know, mentally Evans could not get over the hump. I mean, I think they were in the red zone about 2 or 3 times. They came with no points. So there were opportunities 4 times. So there was opportunities for Evans to really put this away, and they just couldn't get it done. So great job to Apopka's defense for, you know, crunching it down within the 20-yard range of a touchdown. But, you know, Tyson Davison, as we talked about in the pregame show and before week 0, that he was this football team. And so this team will be carried as far as he takes them. And I don't think that's good enough for this to be a state championship caliber team, because he's going to need help around him. But as of right now, his first 2 weeks at Coe and Evans, it has been enough to get over the hump to go to 2-0. But they better find out some offense this week, because there's some Panthers that are sniffing out these Blue Darters.
We're going to talk about that game here a little bit later. Again, Ladarius Pryor, the junior running back at Evans, 17 carries, 96 yards. But the Rolson Darters move on to 2-0. Guys, this is a game we had an eye on. Palm Bay Heritage comes into Bokie, and the Seminoles take away 34-14, AJ.
Yeah, it was a strange game when I looked at the box score and the stat line, but it's Seminole type ball game. Xavier Tucker had a punt block, set them up with a short field. Warren Burchell had an 88-yard kickoff return. Jalen Chaplin had a 75-yard kickoff return. So there's 21 of the 34 points right there off of good special teams play. But then Rasheem Turner also added 10 tackles. But we got Liam Allen on here. This guy went 4 for 4 and 3 for 4 with PAT points. He had 15 points he accounted for as a kicker. That's big time.
Actually, I talked to Coach Calhoun. He was actually 4 or 5. One of the guys didn't run out on PAT or field goal team, and he got one blocked. And he was so ticked off because this kid nailed a 45-yarder, man. I tell you what, Liam Allen was a boss in this game, Baylin.
Yeah, but what concerns me about this is they're relying on special teams. I mean, AJ Saloon, which obviously is a big part of this game. It's 1/3 that no one really talks about, which helped them go to this 34-14 victory. But, you know, we're known for Seminole offensively too, and they really haven't done anything, especially with the Jones loss and now Palm Bay or the Heritage. Their win there. I mean, when you have 4 field goals, which is 12 points, and then you have 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, and then a block punt that sets you up offensively within a short field. I mean,
That's a complete team. That's a team. That's a team that can
I did hear that there was 9 drops in the game. I know that was an issue against Jones too. So
yeah,
they got
to
figure out some receiver. I'm just being honest. I mean, this is a team that could really win the state championship this year. They are designed on the roster and what they have as a coaching staff. Obviously, who's running the quarterback with Michael Clayton. They have all the pieces to win a state championship. I think those little things like 9 drop passes and relying a lot on field goals, because obviously you're not scoring touchdowns if you're kicking field goals. So I think they just got to figure it out offensively. I think they will. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying I thought this game was going to be like 60-14 or something crazy. But
you
still got the win, and they're moving on.
Yeah, I agree. Heritage is a great program. They had a great season last year, and they got plenty of talent coming back. All right, guys, this was the game you guys were at. I got the score wrong there.
No, you don't.
Oh, it's right, 28.
No,
TFA.
Right. Dan, did you do that on purpose?
Edgewater. I got the record wrong. Edgewater's 1-1. TFA wins 28-24, AJ.
Yeah, I mean, pregame, me and Baylin was out there looking, and we actually joked with each other, and we was like, can we switch our picks? When we looked at TFA in the trenches, like, they front seven, man, they stand toe-to-toe with any team in the state. When you look at them, they get off the bus. That's a real football team. Demetrius McCray had a terrific game, 6 catches, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I just think that the team feeds off of the leadership. So I want to give a shout out to Coach Moffitt and Coach Conaway. I think those two men have selflessly come together, and they figured out a formula to make this a very successful situation at the moment. We'll see what the future lies, but right now TFA is rolling. That's a very, very talented ball club. Let me see. Aiden Hall had 15 tackles. Noah Maddox had 12 tackles, and then Devin Jackson also had 12 tackles in a big PBU. So it was a complete win. They came back. They were down 10 with 4 minutes and found a way to win. So good ball win for them.
And guys, Edgewater actually is at 1-1 now. They had to play a makeup game from week 1 last night against Wakava and took care of Wakava fairly easily. That was it was like 42-7 or something like that. But congratulations to the Eagles, get back on that. It's such a short. These guys are playing 3 games literally in 10 days.
Dan,
yeah,
I got to do this. Here is your flowers, TFA. Because I was not a believer. I even said it last week. They had to make me believe. I was on the field. And this is why it's very important, guys, to see things for what it is and not just make assumptions. Because when AJ and I walked on that football field, and I saw for the first time, I don't know if AJ's seen them at practice or not, but I have not. I was freaked out by the talent size, number one, and just the talent in general that TFA has. And I know we talk about the transfers and stuff, but guys, TFA is the real deal. Like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this team actually can match up with Edgewater, because I thought the size difference was going to be a key for Edgewater. I thought they would just really win in the trenches. That was not the case, guys. Edgewater just didn't dominate TFA. It was a great game. Now, granted, Edgewater was up 10 points with 5 minutes left in the game. And just watching the sideline of TFA and how those players came together, there's a real brotherhood over there. They believe in each other, and there was no negativity. The coaches kept encouraging the players. I was just – the whole program in itself was actually headed in the right direction for TFA. And I just want to give Moffitt the flowers. I want to give Chris Mitchell what he did defensively with his flowers. I mean, I got a bunch of flowers. Coach Conaway, everybody. And then Solomon Georges throwing the game winner technically on 4th and 14, letting his player make a play. A lot of times – quarterbacks, they just throw it up and just kind of blindly, say a prayer, especially in that situation. There was a plan there. I'm going to give my player a chance in the middle of the field on 1-on-1, and he made a play. Number 6, McCray, that kid right there, unbelievable talent. He scored twice in this football game. My goodness, I can't say enough about that kid, but just the whole school and the whole AJ, you saw it for yourself. They are a real team. And TFA deserves all the credit. And Edgewater's not a bad team. It's just, man, to lose.
No, listen, 2 talented teams, and obviously the score told it. I tell you what, it looked like a battle. You guys told me about the battle. It was back and forth. TA won this in the last minute and a half, and you talked about the size. Two massive offensive and defensive lines. These are two quality programs, but we got one more game to hit, and this is it. This is the game I was at. The number 7 Cowboys from Osceola fall to Lake Mary, 24-27. AJ.
Yeah, Lake Mary. They came away with the victory. Noah Grubbs. Noah had like almost 200 yards passing. It was a quiet stat line for him, to be honest with you.
It was a very balanced offense. I mean, they were able to do things on the ground, in the air. Looked a little rusty in the first half, but that's uncommon in the first half of the season. But Isaiah Thomas didn't run for a lot of yards, but he was effective when he did. Osceola, Elijah Menendez had a big interception. He actually batted the ball down from Noah. Grabbed it. That was a big turnover for them, but it seemed like they had a hard time getting the ball. Tavion Swint was separated his shoulder. He's fine now, but he didn't play the whole second half. So, Coach Pinellas and the staff over there are making some corrections this week, and they got a whole season ahead of them. Baylin.
Yeah. And I do want to give AJ a little point at the end because I know he had a pretty good point coming up. But here's one thing that we talked about, and I specifically talked about last week. We talked about the offensive line play. Noah, yet again, did not get touched. There was no sacks out there. Now, what Dan did allude to, I mean, watching it back, there was times where Noah was trying to force the deep ball because they knew the secondary, they had to prove themselves. Also secondary, they were letting it rip. So great job to Osceola and how they played defensively to keep Noah contained, to make it balanced. And then Isaiah Thomas took over in the fourth quarter, scoring back-to-back touchdowns. But here's the key thing that we talk about. Lake Mary's defense is actually legit. And they don't really have, again, big star names, but they held – AJ, I don't know if you know this. They held Osceola Cowboys to 0 first downs until 4 minutes into the fourth quarter. You know how hard that is with the triple option offense? 0 first downs until 4 minutes into the fourth quarter, and that was on the drive that they actually scored a touchdown. That is unbelievable. I mean, great job to Lake Mary Rams. Again, we don't really talk about them because Noah's out there and Isaiah Thomas and those guys. I mean, they're scoring up points, but the dominating thing that they've done back-to-back weeks with Cardinal Gibbons starting him to 14 points technically until the last Hail Mary at the end to go to 20 points. And then 7 points also, which is the fourth quarter with 4 minutes left, which probably a lot of backups are playing at this point because it was 24-0. My goodness, great job Lake Mary Rams defense and what they're doing over there. Dan, you saw it firsthand. And AJ, I want you to finish with your point because I know you probably had one to finish off your stuff.
No, just Osceola. Just got to see what they do. They got a lot of talent. They just have to figure it out. I think, honestly, the quarterback play, that's the name of the game at any level. So they'll figure that out, and we'll see what happens.
No doubt about it. Well, Lake Mary moves on to 2-0, and I agree with you. Coach Rob Marler, the defense coordinator for Lake Mary, has done a wonderful job, especially the last 2 seasons. I really liked what I saw on that defensive line and the secondary. But, I said the key to this game was going to be the secondary for Osceola, and they did. They did do a lot. I mean, they played very well. All right, guys, if you're keeping track at home, Baylin was 6-3 this week, 5-4. Baylin takes a 2-game lead on AJ for the season at 22-6. All right, guys, when we come back, we got John Garcia Jr. for Rivals. You're watching the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. We'll be back in 30 seconds. All right, welcome back to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That's AJ Brooks and Baylin Trujillo. And welcome John Garcia Jr. from Rivals.com. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be on with you, fellas. How we doing?
Doing great. John, you were actually at the Lake Mary Osceola game with me on Friday night. A lot of talent on that field. Let's talk about some of that.
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously, a game that was, like Baylin said, really controlled by that Lake Mary front seven. Not easy to do, triple option. We all know it's a lull you to sleep type of offense that is banking on mistakes. It's banking on eye candy. It's banking on undisciplined defenders, and it just didn't happen for Osceola. They could not move the ball to save their lives. Then, like you said, Swint got hurt. I thought that was big. Melendez didn't get carries. He said they're saving him for the playoffs for what it's worth. So once you limit the talent that way, it was a bit of a feeding frenzy for Lake Mary, who, again, their front seven just looked absolutely in control and disciplined the entire time. So offensively, they didn't need much. They needed to sustain the ball, run some clock, which they did. They focused more on the running game, like you guys talked about with Isaiah Thomas and company. And Noah Grubbs did enough to keep the Osceola defense, on their toes. They did take the deep shots. I thought that was really smart by design to sort of loosen things up a little bit. And then obviously the run game took over from there, along with the short to intermediate passing game. So not the prettiest win. Lake Mary said it, but you'd rather have your dud game against, Osceola than against Lakeland coming up. So I think that was really important for them to not look ahead too much. But yeah, the usual suspects performed well. Noah Grubbs, again, we keep talking about his reshaped body, his improved footwork. Those are things we saw in conjunction with being protected, like Baylin talked about. And the accuracy in the intermediate level was really important. I mean, you talk to college coaches, those are the 3rd and 6 chain movers. I mean, the deep ball is flashy and sexy, and it's fun to talk about, and it's viral when it connects, but really it's about those short to intermediate passes when you're talking about a high level quarterback. And that's where he was at his best, particularly in between the hashes. So I thought the Stars looked the part. Elijah Melendez was fantastic, the most physically imposing player out there, and he showed it, but he couldn't do it all by himself. So really impressive for Lake Mary, just from a disciplinary standpoint and really from a steadiness standpoint on offense, kind of sticking with their plan, even though, the kids were getting a little frustrated with the slow start.
Before I let these guys fire away some questions, one big in recruiting is Elijah Menendez this weekend decommitted from Miami. What are you hearing? What's going on there?
Well, we were there watching him with the Auburn gloves pregame, and, we were wondering, hey, is this a tell? And it certainly was. He went to Auburn the next day, and by breakfast, he was letting us know, hey, I'm going to decommit from Miami. And look, there was a lot of this buzz in the summertime. He took official visits to Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and Auburn. There was a
Michigan. He was hot. I mean, Michigan was hot on him for a little while.
Yep, Michigan was in there too. I mean, there was a sense this kid wanted to play SEC ball. I mean, look, he's the biggest, most physical linebacker in the state. He's a downhill cat. You understand the scheme fit in some of these defenses. And I think once he doubled down on the Miami commitment at the end of June, Auburn and Oklahoma kind of upped their communication with him. They did not want to slow down. Ole Miss dropped off a little bit, Michigan as well. But Auburn and OU were like, we're still going to get you to games. We're still going to recruit you. And that really stuck out to Elijah. So he was on the Auburn trip, and it all sort of, clicked for him that he was going to decommit and play SEC football. And right now, with that visit behind him, you got to feel like the Tigers are in a really good spot for him. OU's still in there. He says it's a 2-team race. So if the Sooners get a visit, we'll see. That coaching staff is defensive laden. Brent Venables is a linebacker guy. So if he does get back out to Norman, I'd keep an eye on the Sooners. But for now, absolutely, Auburn's race to lose. And again, you understand the fit there. You understand the logic of wanting to play SEC ball with that type of downhill style.
I know when he took that visit to Oklahoma during the summer, I actually reached out to Danny Stutzman, and he felt like the visit went really well with Oklahoma. So I was kind of surprised that didn't light up a little bit more based on what Danny was telling me.
Yeah, they're in it. I think Ole Miss was the trendier pick in the summer months, but clearly that first Oklahoma visit, that official visit, went very well for Elijah, for him to continue considering the Sooners, because a lot of people are viewing this thing as, hey, he decommitted from Miami. He's going to commit to Auburn here soon, and that's kind of it. But Elijah himself has said, no, Oklahoma is that other option. So clearly wants to play SEC ball, and if they can work out the logistics of getting out to Norman to see the Sooners in game action, that could even things out and maybe drag out this race just a little bit longer. So if you're a Sooner fan watching, you want this thing to go into November or December. And if you're an Auburn fan, conversely, you want this thing done in the next couple of weeks.
AJ?
Hey, John, how you doing tonight, man?
Good, man. Yourself?
Good. Have you heard of any news with any players as far as opening up their recruitments with any of the Florida schools, with in particular how well Miami's doing in retrospect to how bad I guess Florida and Florida State is looking? I know it's early, but have you heard of any? You obviously you had a Vernell Browns, you had a Javion Hilsons with Florida State and Florida. Any news with any of those kind of guys?
No official news yet, but schools are certainly circling. I think when you talk about recruiting and, one game can't matter too much, but perception does matter in recruiting. And when you're fielding those phone calls, it's going to come up, with these other schools, particularly when there's such a drastic difference between, one in state like Miami and Florida State and Florida on the other side, all at the same time, which we don't typically see. Usually it's kind of a sliding scale. It's not so extreme in one direction versus the other. So, yeah, I mean, the Ethan Pritchards of the world are getting more phone calls. Auburn, Baylor, UCF trying to take advantage there. Hilson is still getting a ton of phone calls. I mean, and Vernell Brown's always going to get phone calls, even if Florida wins the rest of their games. He's just too dynamic of an athlete to not be on flip watch to some degree. But no decommitments yet because of the games. But I think there are some schools circling, trying to take advantage of these very different starts for some of these schools. And obviously Miami is already recruiting at the highest clip among them. So you would expect that to continue with maybe even a wider margin if these trends on the field, do continue.
Baylin?
I'm a big quarterback guy. John, me and you, we communicate a lot, and I love what you do, especially Rivals. And I honestly will tell you, and I have no shame in saying this, I believe you guys do it right as far as how you rank the players, how you evaluate players. I think from all the platforms, I think you guys actually do your homework and see these guys live, which you just saw Noah Grubbs live, I think for the first time playing in person other than a camp. But let's talk about the three guys. I really want to know your opinion, just, quick opinion on, the three guys I trained that are top 20 in the country. You got Noah Grubbs, Brady Hart, and Darion Coleman. What you like about those three guys and, what you're looking forward to, hopefully, when you go see them play, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, with Grubbs, certainly you understand the arm talent is off the charts. You like what he's done from a physical standpoint over the last, 6 months or so, reshaping his body. And now to where he looks like he could carry more good weight going forward. You understand that his footwork has improved tremendously. I thought, these guys who have big arms, they could rely on that, and that's something that is fine in high school and it doesn't really hurt you as much. But when you get to the next level, it really slows you down. So when guys have big arms, but they still work on those small mechanical things like the footwork and the anticipation, it really impresses me. And that's really where I've taken away from Noah, both at the camp scene and on the field, during the game this past weekend. He's a leader out there, which is something you can only see in person. There are high level quarterbacks that people don't gravitate towards. I mean, there's a 5-star, I'm not going to say his name. There's a 5-star that our guys at Rivals saw this weekend who was off by himself pregame, during the game. I mean, just not rallying his guys. But he's uber talented. So it doesn't matter today. But for us, all those things are data points as we try to figure out, how to split hairs between these great quarterbacks. So I'd like to see the trajectory that Noah's on in that regard. With Darion Coleman, I mean, easy to see juice, right? The arm talent, the ball pops. I mean, he rips it. It's almost surprising when you see his slight frame, and then when you watch the ball come out, you're almost like, where the hell did that come from? So the physical traits are very apparent there. We know he's a great athlete on top of it. For him, it's just, hey, you're the guy this year. It's about the full body of work. And, when you are that slight, your availability is your best ability. So seeing if he can get through a full season, I think is going to be really important to him. Seeing how he processes with such great talent on the outside, I think is going to be really important for his development, in addition to obviously getting a little bit bigger going forward. That's going to be huge for him. But Jones is loaded. We're going to get a lot of opportunity to see him. And then with Brady Hart, I'll see him once more this coming Friday against IMG. He's probably my favorite of the bunch right now, just in terms of a long-term projection. He's a guy who's kind of in between Coleman and Grubbs. Arm talent absolutely there, but when you talk about his frame, there's just so much more that he's going to put into it. So you combine that with, almost a gunslinger mentality that we see on tape. And that's what really fits this era of college football. It's about pushing the ball down the field, making those chunk plays, and racking up the points. It sounds simple, but how many, great quarterbacks have to go out there and win shootouts? And there's a certain level of passer that you're like, hey, I don't know if this guy is going to be in there 4 quarters, in the paint, as they say, winning this type of game. But with Brady Hart, we already have that question answered in a very big way. So now, just like we talked about with Darion, how does he continue to fill out and progress and deal with a bit of a target on his back as a Michigan commitment, as now a high profile guy, as opposed to one who is breaking out like he did last fall. So 3 really good passers, guys who are all still young in their development. So it's really fun for us to watch that trajectory sort of play out in front of us, because none of these guys are maxed out physically. We see that a lot as well. And that's becoming, as we study this thing, it's becoming a bad thing. These guys who are, as a sophomore in high school, look like they're already in college. We don't see a lot of growth when they do go through college. So we're valuing those who we know are going to grow a little bit more going forward, fill out a little bit more going forward as well. So your guys are in good spots right now, and there's a lot ahead of them, this year for sure.
John, the 2025, 2026, 2027 class is really shaping up here in Central Florida. And I asked this question to Larry Bluestein a couple weeks ago. How does Central Florida rack up as far as talent against the traditional powerhouse of talent we see now in South Florida traditionally over the years?
I mean, look, on the field, Central Florida's got the momentum, right? I mean, I was at the Armwood-Norland game, and people had their jaws on the ground for how dominant Armwood was in that one. Obviously, I was at Lakeland, Miami Central as well. Same deal. People were flabbergasted. How is this happening? So I think it's become a huge talking point, and the elite programs in Tampa, in Orlando, and in between can absolutely hold their own. And look at Coco. I mean, I think this IMG game is going to be incredibly competitive. I don't think if this is 2-3 years ago, this is a 55-10 game. It's not going to be like that on Friday. I think this is going to be highly competitive, and just that fact alone is a really big deal for traditional high school football and the Central Florida pipeline as well. So I think at the very top, you're talking about legitimate programs. You guys were talking about TFA. They're loaded. Edgewater's got dudes everywhere. I mean, even you can go to a Bishop Moore, Dr. Phillips, West Orange has multiple Power 5 guys. There's a lot more depth at the top, but then the very top is competitive anywhere. And I think those schools can travel, and we've already seen evidence of that.
John, there's a couple other names that are trending pretty high right now in the 2026 class. One's Michael Clayton, the quarterback at Seminole, and the other one is Isaiah Williams at Tavares, the linebacker. Give us a little bit of feedback on both of those guys.
Yeah, actually similar, really early in their development, but you wouldn't know it if you just looked at them. Michael Clayton, like every bit of, 6'3", maybe pushing 6'4" at this point, probably closer to 200 pounds, just a big physical classic pocket style passer. And there's still plenty room for that in this day and age of college football. That's why his recruitment has blown up in the last year or so. He's obviously at Seminole now. So that spotlight is one that is not going to go away for him anytime soon. I think he's going to Nebraska this weekend. So he's about to see a lot of schools that are high on his list: Ole Miss, Missouri, a couple other ones in there. And then Isaiah Williams, I mean, he's physically put together about as well as you could hope for with a high school junior. 6'2", 215, offensive tackle arms. I mean, just long arms that make you wonder, hey, is this guy going to be an edge prospect? Can he put his hand in the dirt at the next level? But he's actually playing off the ball as a junior, which we love. We want to see a little bit of everything with defenders, because the more you can do, the more you're going to be on the field at the next level. And for linebackers, it's about third down. What is your value on third down? And he's clearly got pass rushing upside, but if he can start to balance that out with some coverage skills, I think he's going to be a no-doubter, Rivals 250 blue chipper who moves up the list. So yeah, those guys are absolutely headed in the right direction. Both 4 stars right now at rivals, but still very early in their physical development. So we're banking on that trajectory a little bit.
John, obviously here in Central Florida, we've got some pretty big offensive linemen. Miami snagged 3 of them with Jaden Wilkinson and Max Buchanan. TFA's got a couple guys in Chancellor Barclay and Noah Devine. A little bit of feedback on them and their development right now as they move through the their junior year.
Yeah, I mean, the TFA guys are in great shape. You guys were talking about just the physicality they bring to the table, and that's going to be what sounds like their identity this entire year. And for those guys to be underclassmen, I think is huge, especially Barclay. I think he is one of the more technically sound linemen we've scouted. He's big enough to where you ask the tackle question, but he's probably going to be an inside guy at the next level, which is great. That's what you want. You want that question to pop up because he's going to have success at either spot, and that's why his recruitment has really taken off. I don't know if he went to a camp this offseason where he didn't pick up the scholarship offer. I'm talking Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Florida State, wherever it was, Barclay, Clemson, Barclay went there and earned scholarship offers left and right. I think with Buchanan, you're talking about a guy who is starting to really turn the corner. He dealt with, an illness last year, played a little bit lighter than expected, 265, 270. And then this offseason, he's 295 and like rocked up, no bad weight. And he plays like that. He is a guy who wants high-level competition, who wants to smoke, as they say, but backs it up with great technique and one of the best anchors in the class, regardless of position. Once he digs in and gets his hands on you and sits down, it's hard for anybody to beat him. We saw that on Friday nights throughout his tape. We're seeing it on the camp scene as well. He's a guy who's jumped up as much as any recruit in the country over the last 6 months to 12 months. So again, I mean, there's dudes all throughout that Orlando area, and most of them are trending upwards as opposed to the other way, which is always good to see, because the more you see a guy, the more you can also poke holes in his game, right? So for prospects to emerge, get the offers, and then continue to climb the rankings or even maintain the general range where they are, it means we actually like them more and more the more we see them, because it's always easier to latch on to that new guy, that new emerging prospect, and throw him higher on the rankings because we just hadn't seen the flaws. We hadn't over-scouted him to a degree. But when there are established guys like this that we have now seen in person 5, 6, 7 times, and they continue to impress, it's a very good situation for them to maintain a high level and a smaller number next to their name in the rankings.
All right, guys, John's going to stay with us. We're going to get right into our new top 10 for week 3. And here it goes. Number 10, O'Galley stays put. Spruce Creek at 9. Edgewater drops to 8. OC University at 7. Dr. Phillips now number 6. TFA comes over from the private schools. Baylin, AJ, tell us a little bit about that transition over to the original, the OG top 10.
Well, I made a promise to a couple guys behind the scenes, including Chris Mitchell and Moffitt, that, hey, if you guys win this game, which obviously Edgewater was in our top 5 last week, if you beat them, you clearly are a part of one of the top 10 teams in this program. I mean, obviously, I'm not discrediting, because Bishop Moore can easily be on this list too.
Absolutely.
But, when you win a game like Edgewater, at Edgewater, who hasn't lost a home game in – I don't even remember the last time they lost a home game, let alone a regular season game in 2 years. I mean, that speaks highly volumes. So they deserve every right to be in this top 10. And, of course, they're in the top 5 because they beat a top 5 program in Central Florida. So they have now officially gone into our top 10, and I think they've deserved their flowers like I've given them earlier in the show.
They just had to prove themselves. I'm not surprised when I look at the Elite 100 rankings. TFA has more guys ranked in the 2025 and 2026 than any team in Central Florida. So I'm not surprised. They just had to prove themselves and put it all together.
All right, number 4, Lake Mary moves up to number 4 at 2-0. Seminole, there was not a forfeit with Robinson. They're actually rescheduling that here in a few weeks. Jones is still at number 2, 1-0, and then Cocoa at 2-0 is their number 1 spot. Looking at our private schools, you got Masters Academy at 3-0. Jackson Sketchers really turned out to a really good start. Melbourne Central Catholics at 2-0 at number 2, and then Bishop Moore sitting at number 1. And we're going right into our dudes of the week, John. I know you don't want to comment on that, but look at our dudes of the week. And we're going to start off with our offensive dude. Demetrius McCray, the junior wide receiver at PFA, had 6 receptions for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns, AJ.
Yeah, this kid's a stud. Clearly he's a power forward guy, in my opinion. Good frame, terrific ball skills, and he left some on the field. You go talk to him. It was a couple catches that he knows he should have had, so the upside for him is tremendous.
Baylin?
Yeah, I mean, this is our second week in a row. We had a TFA player win our dude of the week. You know, last week it was a defensive dude, and now this week we got Demetrius McCray on the offensive side of the ball. So TFA is loaded with talent, and they are putting it, they're putting their money where their mouth is and performing on the field. And I mean, again, I didn't realize how dominant they were and how they looked in pregame, watching them in person. This team is really built, and this kid is a big part of why they've been successful.
John, any comments on Demetrius?
Yeah, I mean, look at the picture there. I mean, really intrigued by his lower half. I mean, he's got the frame to play a bit above the rim. He's over 6 feet tall, so he's got that classic wide receiver 1 build. But you watch some highlights from the last game, and with his build, I love the ability after the catch, and that's not something we say about taller, bigger wide receivers. But again, that's the future. I mean, watch these elite guys on Saturdays. You're almost using them like running backs. Hey, they need touches. They need to hit an X number of touches per game. And clearly for TFA, McCray is that guy. Throw him a tunnel screen, throw him a bubble, and let him go to work thereafter. So really intrigued by what we see now. And we know there's going to be some improvement there as well, as AJ was talking about.
All right, congratulations, Demetrius McCray, being the Influencer Council Dude of the Week for the offense. Let's move on. Devontae Anderson, the senior athlete at West Orange. JJ, I know you're big on him. 6 tackles, a 72-yard pick six, 2 receptions for 39 yards and a touchdown. AJ, this guy's an Iron Man.
Yeah, Devontae, he's the truth. Terrific frame, long, rangy. He suffered a knee injury in preseason. This was his first game back, so I'm glad that everything turned out for him. And I think he'll make his money on the defensive side. So seeing him with the 72-yard pick six, I love it. I've been telling him for years. When he was in Little League, I would ask him, wide receiver or DB? And he would say wide receiver. And I would say, no, son, you're going to be a DB. If you ask him now, he'll say DB.
Baylin?
This is impressive. I mean, what a great stat line here. It looks like he contributed in all, both sides of the ball at a high level and was a big reason of their win. I mean, he's accounted for 12 points or 14 points in this football game. So, that's massive volumes for a kid who just returned from a major injury. And my goodness, great job. And they got the W.
John, Devontae has got the size. He has the athletic ability, doesn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to see him back. Remember at your media days, I was just kind of stricken by how big he got. I mean, he looks incredibly imposing right now. He looks like he could be maybe one of these hybrid, safety nickel outside linebackers that every defense wants on their roster. I had some NFL scouts, friend of mine's, calling these monster backs. It's like a whole new position. These are going to be extremely valuable chess pieces at every level of football in this space and speed era that we're in. So if you can be big and imposing and rack up tackles, but also flash the intellect, the instincts, and the ball skills to make turnovers happen, you're going to help yourself in a big way. So hopefully as he gets healthy, colleges kind of circle back around on him. And I think he'll play his way probably into a pretty high level when all is said and done.
John, back in the day, we used to call those rovers on defense, didn't we?
Absolutely.
Rover position. Yeah. All right, our special teams dude, Liam Allen, the senior kicker at Seminole, 4 field goals, man.
Wow.
Nailed them, 45, 37, 31, and 31, AJ.
Yeah, that's big time. Seminole knows that they'll be able to depend on him late in the play, also late in the season. They need a field goal, so that's always good for your ball club.
I tell you what, very proud of the influencer player, influencer counselor, players of the week, our dudes of the week, big time stuff. All right, John's going to stick with us and watch the Baylin and AJ show. When we come back, we're going to have our week 3 predictions. You're watching the Central Florida High School Scoreboard show. We'll be back in a minute. All right, welcome back to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That is AJ Brooks, Baylin Trujillo, and John Garcia from Rivals.com. Guys, let's get right into our big games. Number 6, Dr. Phillips. Travel. Actually, I've got this. They go to Apopka this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're out of Apopka. Both 2-0. This has been a big rivalry for a number of years. AJ, what are your thoughts here? You've got DP in this game.
Yeah, I got DP. Obviously, we spoke about Apopka's defense. I think they will be tested this week. Stanley Anderson and company. They put up 50 points last week against University. I like DP in this ball game. I just think they'll have too much offense for Apopka.
Baylin?
So obviously the last 2 weeks I've picked Apopka, and that's been the difference between AJ and my scores, and that's why I'm up two games right now because the Blue Darters. But this is not the week I'm picking Apopka. As much as I like Tyson Davison and what he's doing, Dr. Phillips has something special going on this year. I've talked to Coach Sapp multiple times in the mornings on my way to school. You know, he's very confident in what this ball club can do. The team is starting to rally around their offense, and their defense is playing great. Special teams has always been a pretty good thing for Dr. Phillips. I think they win in all 3 phases of the game on Friday night. I think Dr. Phillips wins comfortably, whether that's 14-plus points. I just don't think Apopka has enough offense to keep up with Dr. Phillips. Stanley Anderson's playing probably the best football he's ever played, and obviously this is great timing going into senior year as now a Middle Tennessee commit. And so with things rolling right now for Dr. Phillips, I just don't see Apopka doing much to really cause havoc. Now, obviously, their defense is loaded with some good talent. Kingston's playing a great season so far in the 2 games. A big reason why no team has scored yet. But I do believe Dr. Phillips is the deciding factor with that offense behind Stanley Anderson. That's why they'll win. Whether it's 14-0 or whatever, I just think Dr. Phillips is about 2 touchdowns better than Apopka right now.
All right, John and I have the same philosophy. We don't pick games, so we're going to move on. Lake Nona's at Ocoee. Lake Nona's 1-0. Ocoee 1-1. AJ.
Yeah, I like Ocoee in this ball game. Ocoee didn't show any offense the first game of the season versus Apopka, but last week against Olympia, they put up 50-plus points. So hopefully that trend continues for them, and they come away with the victory.
Baylin?
Lake Nona, I think there's a lot of question marks there. I mean, they struggled in a half versus Horizon. Obviously, they got the big victory. Shout out to Michael Dove, who had a great game. I believe they won 28-3 or 28-7. I believe it's 28-3. But Ocoee, I think, is the better team here. I think they win by about 3 scores in this matchup. And I know they might not like it, but I just think Ocoee, with what they did against Olympia, I would say Lake Nona and Olympia would be a really good game if they played each other. But I think Ocoee's going to have a similar game this week against Lake Nona, and I think they got things started to come together offensively and figure things out. Lake Nona, on the other hand, still has a little bit of question marks. They're a talented football team, great coached, but I just think Ocoee has a little bit much more talent, and they got things rolling right now.
I tell you what, 3 scores, Baylin. That's a lot.
We'll see.
All right, number 10, O'Galley goes to Heritage. Heritage loses that one to Seminole last week. AJ?
Yeah, I like EG. I already talked about all the talent on their roster. I think they keep it up. They just needed a quarterback, and Joseph Allen has proven that he will be the guy for them. And I like this as a complete ball club. Even though I like Heritage, Heritage is doing is terrific, but I just think EG is a little too much.
Baylin?
Yeah, I agree with AJ here. I love – this is O'Galley's another O on their record next week when we talk about them because they'll be 3-0 next week. So O'Galley will win this football game. I think it'll be a similar score to what we saw Heritage do against Seminole, except O'Galley will have a little bit more offensive productivity. And I think, Joseph Allen has another big night in the air. And I just think that they're just, that much better than Heritage. And I do agree with you guys. I think Heritage has a great coaching staff. Again, I've communicated with their head coach recently, trained their new quarterback to transfer from Vero Beach. I think they played Seminole pretty well other than special teams. I think they actually held their own for a while. So they're not a slouch over, but I just think O'Galley, this is their year, man. They've got so much talent. I'm really high on this football team like AJ is, and I'm excited to see where this team moves forward.
Yeah, Coach Michael Benson does a great job over at Heritage. This is going to be a fun game to watch. All right, Boone heads over to Olympia, guys. AJ?
Yeah, I like Boone. I like Boone in this matchup. The quarterback play is the difference maker for me. Olympia is still trying to search their rebuilding mode. They lost 20-plus seniors last season, and I like Boone to come away with the victory. Isaiah Mizell, best deep threat in the state. I don't think they'll have an answer. I like both.
Baylin?
Yeah, I mean, we see it here. I don't think Olympia has any chance in this football game. I think Boone offensively is rolling right now. Granted, they are 1-1 with a tough loss from an out-of-state school in week 1, which they still piled over 300 yards of offense. I think they roll over Olympia like they got trounced last week against Ocoee. I think Boone easily wins this football game.
I tell you what, Sam Johnson had a big week this week, and he loved throwing to Isaiah Mizell. He had over 176 yards receiving. But Olympia, Coach Gabriel has got them rebounding a little bit. This is going to be a really good game. That's why we have a matchup here. All right, DeLand travels to Merritt Island. When was the last time they played Merritt Island?
I don't know. That's a good question.
AJ,
I like
DeLand has been gaining some momentum. Very young team, but the Mustangs are 2-0.
Oh yeah, Taj Moore, TJ's Moore, younger brother. He is a freshman running back, scat back, whatever you want to call him. He's a dynamic athlete out there. And is this year 3 for Coach Darlington now?
This is year 3. Yep. So
it's about that time. Even though they're young, the culture and the city. So I like
okay.
Yep. Okay.
Baylin.
Yeah, I mean, but then you look at the quality opponents with Merritt Island, who they've won, and you know who DeLand played the last 2 weeks. I think they have shown that they are a proven team, even with being young. I think DeLand is really trending in the right direction, and we know Darlington. I mean, Darlington didn't miss in his first year. I believe he won 6-7 games his first year at DeLand. It wasn't like a rebuild year. I mean, of course, TJ Moore helps with that when you have a dynamic quarterback, but I think that the culture in that program is like what he had at Apopka. It's very in one city where the whole team rallies around it and the community starts to buy in. And Darlington is a fundamentally sound coach that is well disciplined, and he's going to make sure his offense is perfected, regardless of who's running the show. And I think that I'm starting to believe in this team. I know, again, we talked about me, with my concerns about where they stood with their quarterback and some of the pieces they've lost, but Darlington has that program with the style of offense that he runs. He doesn't really need those big time pieces. If those guys play together, they're going to win a lot of football games. And AJ was impressed with what he saw in the scrimmage. So I think, this is a sleeper team for me, and I'm excited to see what they do this week. If they put it on in Merritt Island, they might creep into our top 10.
Yeah, very well. All right, Poinciana, 2-0, goes over across county there to play Coach Short and the St. Cloud Bulldogs, AJ.
Yeah, I like St. Cloud in this matchup. They got just one too many athletes for me. I think St. Cloud should win this by 2 scores at least.
Baylin, I can't remember when Poinciana was 2-0 last. Coach Taryn Mallard's doing a great job getting these guys going here at the beginning of the season.
No doubt, but I don't ever remember them going 3-0. It ain't happening next week because St. Cloud's winning this football game, so they'll be 2-1. Dan, don't worry about that. St. Cloud offensively is rolling. King at quarterback, I think he's underrated. A lot of people don't really talk about him and what he's done offensively for that program the last couple of years. And Garrett King was his brother, also had a really good career at quarterback at St. Cloud. I think this team is rolling. Coach Smart and what he has done and built that program around a good staff. I love where St. Cloud is trending. They also are a team to look out for, especially in that county where there's really no team other than Osceola to really compete with. So this team keeps trending in the right direction. But, yeah, I would up AJ, and I think they win by 21+ in this matchup. All
right, Jones, Saturday night game. Jones goes to Evans, AJ.
Yeah, Jones goes to Evans. Evans going to play Jones tough. They're not going to be afraid of him. But in the end, I do think that the Tigers will come out victorious. I just think they just have just too much talent. Two well-coached ball clubs. And like I said, Evans is going to play tough. But I think Jones will win at the end of the day.
Baylin?
I was at Jones practice today and just watching how Coach Elijah Williams has that offense rolling. I mean, you guys have to take the time to actually watch Jones and what they do. They run everything like a college program. That's why they have the success that they have. And I'm not just saying that. Obviously, I love Coach Elijah Williams. He was my head coach. But just watching it over and over and over again to get all that talent to really buy in and do everything the right way, the little things like Coach AJ said last week about what Coach Odom is bringing to Evans and the little details, even the yoga stuff on Wednesdays. I mean, that's how you really change a culture and have kids buy in. But watching Jones, I mean, they're on a whole different caliber right now. I wish we would somehow get the Jones-Coco matchup, even throw TFA in there. I know there's some crazy talk out there. But I mean, Jones High School is a well-oiled machine. They blow out Evans this weekend. I think they roll offensively, defensively, special teams. No discredit to Evans. The Soul Bowl, we call it, right, this weekend. I didn't lose to Evans under Elijah Williams, and I don't think Darren will as well. So I'm picking Jones in a blowout this weekend.
All right. This is a big game. Cocoa at IMG. John and I both are going to be at this one. Guys, you guys picking Cocoa. AJ, explain this.
Man, honestly, I need to pick IMG to make up ground on
So you're flipping?
Nah, man, I'm a ride with Cocoa, man. I believe in them. I think they're a top 5 ball club in the state, and I think IMG, I have respect for them. But like John said, if this was 5 years ago, 3 years ago, ain't no way in hell I would pick Cocoa. But nowadays, I think teams like Cocoa, Lakeland, I think they've narrowed that gap between themselves and IMGs. And I think Coach Snyder, he's been a winner for a long time. And I'm a roll with him and Cocoa.
Baylin?
I think Coach Franco and Coach Snyder have an offensive game plan that IMG might not be prepared for. I think they're looking at this like another one of those, smaller, powerhouses in Central Florida that they just have to go through IMG to collect a check. I mean, a couple years ago, they played Jones, they played Edgewater, they blew them out both times. I mean, and those are our powerhouses. That same year, Edgewater went to state, and Jones went to Final Four, and they just look at Central Florida like, it's a good opponent, credible opponent, but we'll roll over them. I even saw an on-3 or something come out with a prediction this week where they predict the score 41-14. Are you absolutely crazy? There's no way. I think Cocoa has a really good shot at winning this football game, and that's really particularly with Brady Hart at quarterback. He's a proven winner. He is, 16-1 as a starter. Technically, that one has an asterisk because they did beat St. Thomas Aquinas last year, and we already know about that story. But, when you have a quarterback like that behind with Javon Boggs out there and the solid defense, especially with the coaching staff, I think these guys have a legit shot at anybody in the entire state. And I do see a ranking coming out where they do have actually Cocoa at number 1 in the entire state and IMG at like 5. So they also predict other programs to be better than IMG right now. And I think AJ said this a couple weeks ago, this is the year to get them. If you want to beat IMG, this is the year to do it. And I know Coach Quinn, the quarterback coach of IMG, he actually personally reached out to me and said, look, I'll take Darion, Brady Hart, or Noah Grubbs right now. I don't know their quarterback situation now, but I know they were looking for one, and that's not a good deal when you're talking about a program that has a bunch of talent that need a guy to deliver the ball. And I know they're scoring a lot of points, but they're also giving up a lot of points. And I love Cocoa in this game, and I think genuinely, not just because they're a Central Florida team, because I could pick IMG, I genuinely think Cocoa is going to beat IMG this week, and it's going to play really between Brady Hart and Javon Boggs, what they do offensively.
Yeah, they brought in a QB right before the season.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've watched a little bit of both teams on film. I think the key, and I can guarantee you Coach Snyder and Coach Frank are all over this, is a quick passing game because Jake Krull and that defensive line for IMG is real, and they are going to come, not to mention Gavin Nix and the other linebacking core. That's going to be the key is can they get the ball out of Brady Hart's hands very quickly into that speed at Cocoa. That's what's going to be interesting. John and I will be there. And then we got another big game, man. Lakeland is coming to town. And for many, they got Lakeland number 1 in the state coming in to play the Rams, AJ.
Oh, yeah, this is why I'm going to make up my ground right here. I knew you was going to go with Lake Mary. I love Lake Mary, respect for Lake Mary. But you talk about a talented ball club, man. Lakeland got so much talent. I just don't see Lake Mary. This is gonna be one where those guys on defense from Lake Mary, I like Lakeland, man. No disrespect to Lake Mary, but I'm taking Lakeland. That's all I gotta say.
Take the under on that one.
Yeah, talking to multiple sources. Yeah, that's funny. Talking to multiple sources that was actually at the Lakeland and Central game, which I don't know if, John, you were there or not.
Yep.
They were actually not impressed, really, with what Lakeland had to do and even Central. And I think that there was a lot of mistakes out there. I think that if Central actually had a decent passing game, they probably would beat Lakeland that night, but they just didn't. And, the one score that they did have was, I believe, a slant route. A guy jumped the ball, a talented corner, jumped the ball, missed it, and the kid scored a touchdown. But, everybody overlooks Lake Mary when you talk about a Lakeland game, right? And that's the most dangerous time. Everybody's worried about Osceola's front seven. I think Osceola's front seven might be just as talented as Lakeland's front seven. And again, Noah didn't get touched. If they start to figure this thing out and as a coaching perspective and how they can chess match this game and keep it close, I can see Lake Mary pulling this out because you have a trigger man like Noah, and you have 2-6-5 receivers out there that actually can make plays within a red zone situation and get it done. And I think, until they prove me wrong, I mean, they went to Cardinal Gibbons, another great front seven, completely wiped the door off them, 49-14, 49-20. But again, I think that Lake Mary's not just one-dimensional anymore behind Noah's arm. Now they're figuring out a run game, and their offensive line is good enough to match with Lakeland's defensive line. And I love my matchup with Noah Groves versus Xander. And I know Xander's a winner, but he hasn't really had to do much because he has talented running backs every game. And I think that Lake Mary's proven with fundamentally sound football that they contain the run game. Matter of fact, their strength is stopping the run. And so that gives Lake Mary an opportunity to win this football game in a close game. I think if they win, it'd be like maybe 14-17, 14-21, 17-21, something around that range. It's not going to be a shootout. But I do think that Lake Mary has a legit shot, not just because I train Noah, but because I do believe in what Lake Mary's doing. And they've proven it with a defense that has really shut out all this top talent defensive line and front sevens.
I tell you what, there we go for week 3. So one last question here for John before we close out the show. What teams in Central Florida do you believe, you've been all over the state, have a shot to make that state title run?
Wow. I mean, a lot that we've talked about. Certainly, at Jones, it's state title or bust, right? I mean, I'm in Miami. I know that, down here, certainly Seminole, if they can circle the wagons, they have enough talent. They're going to score enough points. If they can figure a few things out, I think they can make a pretty deep run. Obviously, you just talked about Lakeland and Lake Mary. That's really the focus at both of those programs, kind of, bouncing back with new look rosters. So, yeah, I mean, TFA, who's, no one's going to sleep on those guys anymore. After what they've put together, went out of state and beat, a very good private school team, and then came back and picked up a come from behind victory.
John, not to mention, Chaminade doesn't look like the same Chaminade, and that would be the team they would have to win a state title.
Quarterback issues, right? They've gone through 2 quarterbacks. The third, Zach Katz might be coming up next, in that conversation. So they've got the best receiver core in the state.
Preston Wright might be the guy this week. I think Zach Katz actually is unenrolled. I actually just trained him this weekend. He unenrolled at Chaminade, so he's no longer there. Okay. I think he's going back to True North. Last time I talked to them, or might be in Miami, Columbus. But I think Preston Wright's going to be the guy from Trinity Catholic who led them to 2 state championships back-to-back years. And he looked really comfortable going into the game this past week. I actually brought them back to eventually tie the game up to go to overtime, but obviously didn't get it done on the extra point. But Preston Wright might be a name that people might want to look out for late because he's a senior and he's going to take over a really talented football team that we'll see what they do.
And that's what I was going to say. The teams in South Florida aren't the juggernauts they were. Again, Chaminade's as talented as anyone, but they got to stabilize the quarterback position. And defensively, they've given up a ton of points. St. Thomas Aquinas, very well coached, very good in the skill positions, but lighter in the trenches. When you talk about, again, when you get towards late in the season, you got to be great up front. That's why they lost to Bishop Gorman. So Miami Central's already got an L on the record. Miami Norland, who went to state last year, already has that huge blowout loss against Armwood to their name. So I think the combination of Central Florida rising and South Florida treading a little bit of water, at least right now, it feels like the door is very much wide open. So
hey, John,
it's a fun season.
John, there's one team I think people overlook, and I'm glad that we're going to get to see them in a couple weeks. Venice. I think that's a team that is loaded, and they're scary. And what they did to Tampa Bay Tech in week 1 and what they did last week, I mean,
they beat Northwestern. Yeah,
that's a team that I didn't realize is loaded. Winston Watkins, a kid that I actually know and talked to and coached in an all-star game in Dallas. That kid is elite, and he's surrounded by such good talent in Venice. We get to see them against Cocoa in a couple weeks. And I know Dan and AJ and myself, we probably all 3 are going to be there. I mean, that is going to be electric.
Yeah, they got IMG on the schedule too. So all these elite teams playing each other will definitely help us figure things out later on.
All right, guys, that is the end. AJ, any parting shots? We let Baylin kind of slide in there a few times.
Oh, nah, man, that's good. I'm good. Can't wait to see this this week, Lakeland, Lake Mary. And then Evans versus Jones on Saturday. So it'll be a good weekend. Then college football is back. NFL's it starts Sunday. This is just a good time for me. I'm just happy, man.
Let's go, Canes, baby. Let's go.
All right. Big thank you for John Garcia Jr. to join us from Rivals.com. For AJ Brooks and Baylin Trujillo, I'm Dan LaForest. Have a great, safe weekend, and we'll see you next week.